It is not a stretch to say that for the world to live, America must die. For the civilized world to live, the Western world must die. Hello from the brutal capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur. I hope you're having an amazing day. Because if you're having an amazing day, well, I'm having an amazing day. If I'm having an amazing day, you should be having an amazing day. Okay, I'm back from my week-long ban because, you know, those cry-bully Zio babies put me on 1 week ban from YouTube because I hurt their delicate feelings, yes. And so that's why I was away from you guys for a week, and I hope you missed me, because I sure as hell missed you, yes. So I'm back, alhamdulillah, I'm back, even though I'm not a Muslim, I'm back. And I am back to critique the world. So my belated New Year's wish for all of you is, Happy New Year, may all your dreams come true, and may the Zio-Saxons' dreams never come true, and may all the working class people of the world find happiness, dignity, and liberation. Now, without further ado, let's begin. I think all of us were deeply moved by Pastor Munther Isaac's Christmas speech, in which he castigated Western Christians of the world for their callous attitude, not only to Muslim people in Gaza, but also to Christian people in Gaza, right? The very same people, you know, who claim that they're fighting against Christian persecution in Islamic countries are very deafeningly silent when Israel bombs the oldest churches in Gaza, and when Israel slaughters in cold blood the descendants of the very same people who walked with Jesus, right? And I'm sure all of us were moved by this speech, and this speech is entitled Christ Under the Rubble. So I'll put a link to it in the description box where you can watch it yourself, okay? And Pastor Isaac's speech was a very damning indictment on the vast majority of Romanized, Westernized Christians, many of whom are not real Christians in the strict sense of the word, but merely politicians. For you see, most Romanized Christians are in fact Pharisees in disguise. And this is not hyperbole. This is something that has been proven by the fact that they are literally supporting a regime that is persecuting the oldest Christian community in the world, the Palestinian Christians, that they regard the Palestinians as being a stateless and barbarous people with no history or culture of their own, when in fact these are the very same people who are descended from the people who walked with Jesus Christ, right? These very same Romanized Christians such as Pastor Franklin Graham or the Sarawakian minister, what's his name, Andrew Boogie. Well, these are not real Christians, because these are people who follow the Christianity of the white man. I've always said that if you want to learn real Christianity, you can't learn it from someone, who calls himself a Methodist from New Jersey, or a Methodist from the Bible Belt, because the fellow probably doesn't even speak a Middle Eastern language, right? And the only Middle Eastern country he visits is Israel, because that's the only one which is palatable enough for his Western sensibilities, right? How could such a man teach you about the culture of someone like Yeshua, Nabi Isa, as the Muslims would call him, if this very same person, if he met the real Jesus in the flesh, would think he was some dirty, backward Arab Muslim, right? And this is why I keep saying most Romanized Christianity, just like Romanized Judaism, aka Zionism, is rubbish. Sorry, it's very loud. Malaysia is a very loud place in the middle of the city, right? I mean, I'm a Confucian, right? It's true that I follow the teachings of Confucius and of Buddha to the best of my abilities, even though I neither speak Chinese nor Sanskrit, right? But I would never take it upon myself to teach Confucianism, to appoint myself an expert on Confucianism, right? But you have these people in the Western countries, as well as Westernized people in Asia, such as pastors of Protestant churches, who appoint themselves as, spokespersons of a Middle Eastern man who lived 2,000 years ago. But these people would never deign, many of them would never deign to visit a Middle Eastern country, except Israel, as I said, because Israel fits their proper Western sensibilities the most, yes, because Israel is the most westernized Middle Eastern country. These people don't speak a Middle Eastern language, and these people probably think Middle Eastern culture, the culture of the Arabs is backward, savage, and barbaric, which is ironic because that's the very same culture that was practiced by the Jewish prophets, right? Like I've said, when people attack the Prophet Muhammad, I'm not a Muslim, but I know when people attack the Prophet Muhammad, but they praise Judaism, this is actually a form of racism against Arabs. You know why? Let me tell you why. Because there is nothing Prophet Muhammad did that the Jewish prophets of the olden days wouldn't have approved of, right? Like, Arabs and Jews are literally the same people, right? But one of them, because, it just so happens that that Zionism is basically used as a cudgel against the Middle East, one of them has more proximity to whiteness at the moment, but let's say Israel doesn't perform, right? And they don't manage to take over Gaza. Well, the anti-Semites, the anti-Semitic countries the historically anti-Semitic countries that all support Israel will go back to hating the Jews, right? The only reason they support them now is because they find that they're a very useful satellite in the Middle East, right? And they also they want to use them as a buffer against the Islamic world. In essence, the very same people who were pogroming the Jews in the olden days are now claiming to be their biggest supporters, right? But make no mistake, they are still persecuting the Jews, right? Because if a Jewish person stands up against Zionism, stands up against the brutality and the atrocities of the Israeli government, you see how friendly they are to that Jewish person, huh? You remember? Jewish elders in front of the White House were getting arrested for protesting against Israel. You remember Professor Norman Finkelstein lost his job because he spoke out against the atrocities of the imperialist, reactionary Zionist regime. Yes, you're only allowed to be a Jew as long as you're a Jew who serves Western, imperialist, capitalist, geopolitical interests, right? Otherwise, if you're not that type of Jew, you're just a dirty Jew to them. But one thing that you might be wondering about when it concerns imperialist colonizers is, why is it that they consider civilized values to be Christian, and yet they hate Middle Eastern culture? Wasn't Jesus a Middle Eastern person? No, don't even call him Jesus. Call him Isa. That's his actual name, right? Wasn't their favorite Palestinian philosopher a Middle Eastern person? And yet, from the Victorian times, in fact, from the Georgian era, all the way up till now, ever since the advent of the white man's burden, in which white civilized Christian men are supposed to go to the uncivilized and unchristian parts of the world to civilize them. Well, this white man burden idea is that, you know, if you're Christian, you're civilized. Of course, if you're a brown or a black Christian, you're a little less uncivilized than others, but you're still uncivilized. And the Christians in the Jim Crow era, who are African American, would know this. Yes, these people, these colonizers who promoted this white man's burden, right, believed that Europeans were intrinsically superior and they were the chosen race. Much like the Zionists believed that the Romanized Jewish people, you know, like the Americans who promoted the concept of manifest destiny, they believe that they are the chosen people to bring light to the dark region of the Middle East, pardon the pun. But the fact of the matter is that you may wonder, since they hate Middle Eastern culture, they think Western culture is superior, right? And they have a contemptuous attitude to Middle Eastern people. Why the fuck are they praying to a Middle Eastern man? But then again, their incarnation of that Middle Eastern man happens to look remotely like Brad Pitt with long blonde hair and blue eyes, doesn't he? And the fact of the matter is that most Romanized Christians in the world, even Christians in Malaysia, have this conception of Jesus as a man with long blonde hair and blue eyes. Not a man who looked more like Osama bin Laden, which he did. The real Jesus really looked more like Osama bin Laden, but you don't like that image of his, right? Because Jesus himself has been Romanized. And if you think Jesus spoke English, you've got to be joking, because English didn't come around until 500 years after Jesus was born. Ugh. The truth is, there is a reason why the vast majority of Malaysian Christians are siding with Israel, even though they know full well that Israel is persecuting the oldest Christian community in the world. And that is because these people inherited their Christianity from the colonizer, right? Like, you know, you are not practicing the orthodox form of Christianity. No, you are practicing a second-hand, whitewashed version of Christianity. And your Christianity was always meant to serve geopolitical interests of the West. You think, when they sent missionaries over to Asia, was it to make friends with the natives and to help the natives? Of course not. It was meant to soften the natives up. I mean, they were like the good cop, right? The soldiers of like the British Army were basically the bad cop, right? But make no mistake, colonizer Christianity is extremely reactionary, right? And that is why many people in Malaysia, many Muslim people, have a bee in their bonnet about Christianity, right? If most Christians in Asia were more like that Palestinian pastor, they wouldn't be paranoid about Christianity. In fact, they would even let their own people convert to Christianity, I'm pretty sure. But the reason why people in Malaysia are paranoid about Christianity is because too often Christians in this country have pro-Western establishment sentiments, especially in Sarawak, and they too often have imperialist sympathies, right? Because the Christianity that they inherited is basically the Christianity of the colonial master, right? And that is why the only way that they're going to actually break free of this colonizer mentality is if they actually travel to Palestine and mix with real Christians, right? Listen to real Christians in Gaza, listen to real Christians in Bethlehem, and basically fire those fake Christians in the Bible Belt or in the Western colonial world who are fire your European preachers or your American Bible Belt preachers that you gain inspiration from, because those people cannot teach you the essence of your favorite Palestinian philosopher. In order to learn about him, you have to go to the Middle East, or you have to learn it from a Greek Orthodox Christian. There's no other way. But it should be as clear as day to all of us with eyes and ears that the West has gone full masked off. You know, in the last 3 months, we have seen that all their riffraff, all their malarkey about human rights, you know, the idea that, oh, they care so much about human rights, not like these barbarous Oriental regimes, is malarkey, right? Because the fact of the matter is that they are willing to carpet bomb Gaza in order to kick the people out. In order, it's basically, it shows you that these people who control the West, who say that they are for human rights, are a bunch of bullshitters, right? That's putting it simply. And Western human rights defenders like Siti Kasim, who say that they fight for human rights but are contemptuous to the Palestinian struggle for liberation and dignity, they too are the same as these Western leaders, right? The West has never seen non-Western people as equal. I'm not talking about the average Western person who might just as much be a victim of the West's barbarity, right? Because the West doesn't care about its own people as well. Like, America gives millions of dollars a day to Israel, and that money comes from your tax dollars, right? Israel is one of the most prosperous, happiest countries in the world, and they have among the lowest rates of homelessness. Meanwhile, Americans are living in penury. They're struggling to feed and to educate their children, and they're struggling to put a roof over their head. And your government is ignoring your plight. Your government, you can't even get health care. Israel gets free health care. Okay? They have universal health care on your tax dollars, right? Your government is supporting this. So I am sorry even for working class people in the Western world, okay? Your leaders do not care about you. The barbarians who lead you do not care about you. They care more about lining up their own pockets and for their own geopolitical interests than they do about you, right? And the fact of the matter is that the West has really gone full mask off because it has basically ignored its people's cries for a ceasefire. Western leaders like Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden have ignored calls for a ceasefire, even though those are popular among their public, right? And when we watch that interview of that British journalist going full mask off and attacking that Hamas man with racist stereotypes about Arab people, when she said, are you not used to women speaking in your in your culture. This just shows us that the West has not changed since its colonial days, right? They still view non-Western people as subhuman, they still view us as savage, and they even view their own people as subhuman, right? Because, like I said, America doesn't even care about its own people. It is neglecting its own people and feeding its golden child Israel, right? Because Israel happens to serve its geopolitical interests in the Middle East, right? Okay, I'm going to end my video now. It's almost time for weights. I'm done with my running. But I just want to say, it is not a stretch to say that for the world to live, America must die, right? For the civilized world to live, the Western world must die. Not a literal death, of course. If you thought that I meant bombing the West to smithereens, that's your imperialist colonial mind talking. No. Countries like America, Israel, Canada, Australia, and so on, have to die a spiritual death, right? They have to. They cannot continue to exist in their current incarnations. Only then will we finally see the beginning of a multipolar world, and then perhaps we may say that the West can be civilized. Thank you.